we always rather start our podcast like I'm super confused and I don't know what's going on, but obviously we know what's going on today. And ladies and gentlemen, you're in for a real treat. Amazing human being on this episode. And they're all amazing, but you're up there in the creme de la creme of Tampa Bay and awesome people. So DJ Lolo Mayhew, welcome to the Not an Accident podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm glad to be here.
I'll be honest with you, and I know we ran into each other a couple weeks ago, and I sent you a message, and I was so hyped that you responded because I know how busy you are. So it's truly an honor.
Well, I'm glad to be here. It's going to be a blast.
So tell me about let's get right into it. Let's go back. Tell me about your relationship with Tampa Bay, and I mean, obviously you're well known in the music scene here and do a lot of amazing events. So tell us about yourself and your relationship with Tampa.
So I was actually a born and bred native Tampa Bayan.
A tampon.
Exactly. I was actually thinking that in my head, but then I wasn't going to say it. I was like, maybe not on the podcast. Yeah. But then you did, so that's perfect.
Completely okay.
So anyways, I was born and raised here, went to school here ever since elementary school. My parents work in the medical field here, and I got into entertainment probably much to their chagrin, if you will, although they kind of put up with it and were like, all right, well, as long as you get good grades, we will support whatever it is that you want to do. So started doing musical theater here at the Straws, which back then I think was just called the Tampa Bay Performing Arts Center.
Yep. Okay.
And was doing musical theater. I booked a Broadway play when I was a kid, probably around... So I started acting because a childhood friend of mine who's now gone on to do amazing, amazing things, her name's Brittany Snow, she used to go to Orlando all the time for auditions, and one time her mom and her asked me like, hey, would you guys want to come?
We're familiar with Brittany Snow.
Okay, yeah. And so I went with them and we started booking a bunch of different TV shows and commercials and things like that together because Orlando had a ton of all of those things that were filming there. I guess because at the time, Florida was actually offering tax write-offs, and so a lot of film productions from LA and New York, et cetera, were actually being shot here. Everything from Nickelodeon to WB and a bunch of different things in between. So that kind of jump-started, I guess, all my acting. I booked a TV show as a series regular called The Reppies, which was a kids show that I sang on, that I did 64 episodes of, that my mom was actually the on-set nurse for, which is pretty crazy and awesome. And then from there, I started going to New York a lot and auditioning for things there. And I ended up getting a part on a soap opera called Guiding Light, which I feel like there's so few soaps now left. I feel like that, day and age. But I remember, man, you'd go to a supermarket or a grocery store checkout, and there were, how many countless magazines that were just completely full with all the soap stars and all the things. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So anyway, so that was a really fun era. So I played Mara Lewis, and I was on the show for almost 3 years. And that was pretty crazy because I was going to Berkeley Prep, which is a school that's local here in Tampa, during that time, but yet filming as a series regular in New York. So I literally flew back and forth from Tampa to New York probably once a week.
So was this during your kind of early teenage years, like middle school years?
I was 5th, 6th grade at this point.
That young?
That young.
Wow.
Yeah, 5th or 6th grade. And then from there, so I did that for about 2-3 years. And then at around 12, 13, I ended up getting let me back up. There is a group here in Tampa. It's called Entertainment Review. And it's kind of like, I don't know if you remember Mickey Mouse Club, but imagine that, but all girls and performing live all over the state of Florida and kind of the Southeast.
Okay.
I was a part of that, and from that, I met these 3 girls, in the group that were my age, and we had found in one of these, teeny magazines, I think it was like Tiger Beat or Cosmo Girl or something like that. It said something along the lines of become a pop diva. And Lydia showed it to me, and I was like, yeah, that sounds awesome. 12-year-old me was like, who doesn't want to be a pop diva? That sounds amazing.
I've been looking for this.
Right?
Perfect.
Right? I knew you wanted to also be a pop diva. Yes, that I sensed that.
More so you. I was talking about you,
me.
but I guess we'll put this out on the podcast now that I
now everyone knows.
At one point wanted to be a pop diva, but I had to go to law school.
Well, I'll have to see some of your moves later on.
Fair enough.
So anyways, we were getting ready to submit the audition tape, and before we had a chance to, the director of the group, Entertainment Review, knew these 2 A&R guys from Epic Sony who were looking at that exact time to sign a young, new, talented group. And so she submitted our materials to them instead. We met with them literally, I think it was about 2 days later in Orlando, and we ended up getting signed to Epic Sony. So within a month, we had started recording a bunch of songs, and we were on tour with Britney and NSYNC maybe a month and a half, 2 months later. So from conception of wanting to be a pop diva to on tour with Britney Spears and NSYNC was maybe a 3-month or less process, which is insanity.
How did that feel? You were what, 13?
At that point, I was 13, yeah. So
how did that feel?
I think at the time it didn't feel weird because when you're that young, if stuff like that happens to you, then that is just your life. That is just what you know, and that's normal to you.
Yeah, that was your environment, and you're a pop diva now.
Exactly,
well on your way anyway. So no, all joking aside, I guess if you don't know any different and you've kind of been a part of this entertainment world, it's like, this is just the next step to stardom, more or less.
So I was really lucky, I had 3 girls that were like my best friends. We weren't put together or anything like that. They were actually girls that I had grown up with and known for years and years and years. And
based out of Tampa, which is so cool.
All of us.
That's awesome.
So it was actually pretty cool. Like not that long ago, who was it that, so many amazing celebrities have come now and received it, but gotten the key to the city. I think it was the last one that I saw in the news was Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
And I was like, I too have a key to the city, and not quite as cool as Taylor Swift, but
but we're in that club together.
But we're in that club.
You have a key, like I have a key. T Swift has a key.
That's right. We all get the key. I don't know what the key goes to. It's on a plaque, but I want to see if there's like a door it opens because that would be cool.
If I ever get the mayor on the podcast, that'll be one of my first questions. It'll be like, well, number one, obviously, can I have my own key?
Can I have a key?
I want to be in this club. And then
2,
where does that key go?
That's right. Absolutely.
And then we'll take it from there.
That's right.
So you're having this incredible experience at 13 years old. You're touring around with Britney Spears and NSYNC. Are you still in school at this point, or are you kind of homeschooling, or some version of that? How is that working?
So my parents were absolutely steadfast in not taking me out of Berkeley, and so which
is a good shout out. It's a great school, by the way.
Amazing school. Go Berkeley Prep. My parents, basically, we all had tutors while we were on the road, so we wouldn't, get behind in our schooling. But I think I was allowed to have some of the tests proctored, but a lot of the times when I'd come back to school, and this is another kudos to all the teachers at Berkeley, they would stay after school for hours and hours, and I'd have to take one test after another. So if school ended at 3 p.m., I'd sometimes be there till 6, 7 p.m. just taking 4 tests in a row, which, by the way, is not easy.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course.
I don't even know how I didn't have complete brain fry at that point in time. But, I think for me that I was just so grateful that I was being allowed to do this by the adults in my life that I didn't question it. And I was like, if this is what I have to do to get it done and make sure that I can keep living my dream, then of course I'm going to do it.
I had a similar experience. I had parents that were obviously wanted me to be in school, hence where I am today, but were super cool and supportive. So I grew up skateboarding and stuff, and obviously didn't go anywhere, very far with it or anything. But a buddy of mine who was a pro skateboarder was in town, and I told my mom, I was like, hey, I'm not going to school for the next 2 weeks. I'm going to skate every day with so-and-so. And she's like, that's super cool. Yeah, can you get your work done? And I'm like, yeah. And I think that's kind of normal. I don't know necessarily normal, but obviously school is very important, but parents are so supportive of their kids' dreams now, which is really rad. I feel incredibly grateful to have parents like my mom and my dad. I would not be where I am right now if it wasn't for them 100%. So tell me, I want to take kind of focus in on this time a little bit. Yeah. What was it like being on tour with these individuals and trying to be a normal 13, 14-year-old teenage girl? Hey. Very confusing and weird. Do you go to the mall? Do you, where did... Oh, yeah, because back in the day, the mall was the only place that you could go as a 13, 14, 15-year-old girl, without your parents. So absolutely we went to the mall. It was weird because... we'd be performing in front of anywhere up to 50,000 person arenas. And, I would be like, hey guys, what's up? I'm Lauren. And they'd be like, I'm Lydia, I'm Tracy and Ashley. And we're a PYT. And the crowd would go crazy. And then we'd come the next day and I'd have the same armband on I had from the night before. And then I'd get torturously made fun of for wearing it. I'm like, really? Because this was kind of cool last night, but all right. Yeah, So, you kind of learn to live in both worlds and just adapt. I feel that for me, it worked to downplay all the other things I was doing as much as possible just so that I could be a normal, regular kid. But yeah, I remember actually one of the craziest and most interesting snafus, if you will, was I think I was going to someone else's homecoming. It wasn't my school, but it was a different, a guy from a different school had asked me to go to their homecoming. And I found out about a week before, which obviously homecoming for any kid is a massive deal. I found out a week before that we were performing and presenting at the Nickelodeon Kids' Choice Awards, my band was. And so I couldn't go to homecoming anymore. And so I had to call this kid and let him know that a week before the dance that I couldn't go.
And I told him, I said, listen, and he was super cool about it. He like totally understood and got it. I go, however, I have this really hot girlfriend and she's super down and she knows all your friends and she wants to go. And they ended up going and having an absolute blast. But I remember this kid's mom calling my mom and just reaming her out, being like, how could you have your daughter do this to my son and blah, blah, blah. My mom's like, this is like, she's under contract. This isn't up to her. She didn't choose this. Yeah. And anyways, it's just so funny. Like, it's all relative what's important in someone's life and, the things that are really big at that time. I mean, for any 16 or 15-year-old kid, homecoming, prom, these are life and death situations, or at least they seem like it at the time, So you can't downplay those things. But it's just funny looking back, like, I remember, like, what a big deal that was.
I can imagine, to say the least. And, I don't, like, if you hear the full story of, I'm sorry I can't go to homecoming, but I'm presenting at the Nickelodeon Kids' Choice Awards. It's like that's not like washing your hair. That's a pretty good excuse. So tell me, where did things transition from there? And then, when did the DJing start? Was there a long period of time? We're not even close. To that, yeah.
Okay,
no, where are we at now?
So PYT took us up to about 16, 17 years old.
So the 4 or 5 year run.
Right.
Yeah.
So at about that time, I had started, I went back to acting. I started acting and everything again. So I did a bunch of different guest stars, some recurrings, and I booked a movie called Raise Your Voice. That was a movie I did with Hilary Duff. I was her arch rival. Mm-hmm. And then I also did one of the American Pie movies where I played Stifler's dream girl. I played Ariana. She was the head cheerleading captain. So I kind of delved immediately right back into that. And I was flying back and forth both from LA and New York. And then when I applied to colleges, I knew, okay, this is very difficult doing this from Florida. So when I applied to colleges, I pretty much applied to mostly places in either LA or New York. UCLA was my first choice, and when I got in, I was super pumped and immediately jetted over to the West Coast and made that my home. So I lived, in Westwood for, oh my goodness, all my college career. And then stayed there. When I graduated, I stayed there and continued acting and singing and all that stuff. So I was still doing recurring and guest star roles and different stuff like that. And then I also started singing out there. I was performing at different places. And it wasn't until, right when I graduated, hold on, let me back up. So my senior year, I kind of felt like, I've been so overwhelmed doing all the acting, all the music, plus all my education.
Because you're like, 10, 12 years into this at this point?
Oh,
of your basically career.
Yeah. That I literally felt, I was like, maybe it's a good idea for me to just be a kid for a hot second and just really get the most out of my last college year, and just have those memories, right?
Yeah, 21, 22 is pivotal.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So I did that. And then when I graduated, I was pretty depressed because I was like, okay, I did all my college degree I did all my pre-med prereqs to kind of follow my family's footsteps. I figured, if I was going to go to school, I wanted to get an education in something else because I'd been doing acting, music, all these things for my whole life. And not that, UCLA has a phenomenal theater and arts program and all that sort of stuff. But I just kind of figured if I'm going to go to college, I would rather get an education in something else as maybe, if anything else, to broaden my horizons as a backup plan, just other options, all of those sorts of things.
So you didn't study theater and arts wow.
No.
Okay, another curveball.
Yeah. So I did a communications major, I did all my pre-med prereqs, and I minored in Spanish. So I did 2 majors and a minor.
Wow. Okay.
While being full-time acting and singing. So I took summer school to do that curriculum.
You were running.
I was hustling. I was taking classes from 8 a.m. to noon. I was doing auditions in the afternoon. I was going to red carpet events in the evening. And then after that, coming home, running on a treadmill or on an elliptical, while studying stuff so that I could be ready for the next day. I was basically go, go, go. But it kind of looking back at it, I feel like I've always been at my best when I've been busy and kind of at peak capacity. I feel like it makes me feel like I'm achieving something. It makes me feel like I'm working towards something. It makes me feel like, I'm getting closer to the goals that I've set for myself. When I have too much time on my hands, that's when I have to start to worry. But maybe it's because of this past that I feel like this way at that point. But anyway, so after basically graduating from college and feeling, wow, I don't want to be a doctor. I haven't really acted on anything in the last year or really been singing that much. And in entertainment, I feel like more so than really even any other industry, it's riding a wave, right? So it's just because I had done all of these cool things when I was a kid, it almost felt like none of it mattered because it wasn't yesterday. So agents and managers or different casting directors would be like, you seemed like you were doing really well. Like, what happened? I'm like, nothing happened. I just finished school. Like, and now I'm back. Like let's do this.
Yeah, what can you do for me today? It's like,
right.
I've been doing this for a decade.
Exactly. And I almost felt like I got stuck in this weird rut where like I had done too many credits and I had done too many things and accomplished too many things to be considered like, oh, the new kid that this agent just discovered or that this producer just discovered. But I also wasn't, just coming off of some massive hit TV show. So I fell in this weird no man's land that really, I don't know, it really sucked, first of all. And I felt like kind of hindered me in terms of getting new parts. So hence bringing me to my next kind of curveball in my career, which I got this audition to be the ring announcer and national anthem singer for the WWE, which at the time I was like, okay, I had like a kid, maybe in 5th grade that, was a guy friend of mine that I had a crush on who loved that, like back in the day. That was basically, watching it with him was like my extent of knowing what was going on in the WWE universe.
What is Hulk Hogan?
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
I mean, it's not like I don't live under a rock. It's like not that I didn't know who like the big
no
superstars.
pun intended,
yeah,
considering
right.
The Rock. So I see what you did there.
I have to tell you, I didn't even mean to do that, but now that I said it, I love it.
Well done. Well
Thank
done.
You. Yeah. Even subconsciously.
I want to, even before we get into the WWE, I want to circle back to your college experience.
Sure.
I'm trying to figure out the best way to really ask this, but do you think because you ran so hard in college, you were really experiencing your college experience after college? And let me kind of dig in a little bit deeper to that. Most of us that, going to college and things like that, that's kind of the pause. Like I felt like high school was way harder than college was. And then going to college, I was like, I can like sleep in, like I don't even have to do anything today. Mm-hmm. Like it's kind of, but you weren't doing that. You were like, oh cool, I'm double majoring and I'm hustling and things like that, pursuing my acting and my music career. So do you think you almost kind of like switched the roles and that might've been why it was a little different?
Maybe. I mean, I feel like I did do a few things to make sure or to ensure that I had a college experience while I was there. Like one thing was, I had an apartment when I was there from the beginning, but I begged my parents to have on-student housing my freshman year because I knew that if I didn't live on campus, especially at the very beginning to initially make all your friends and everything, that it was going to be really difficult for me to form.
You're just attending at that point.
Right, exactly.
You're not making relationships.
So that was a big thing that I lived on campus my freshman year. 2 was that I was huge into going to all of the UCLA basketball and football games and things like that. And I used to go with, different, I actually myself wasn't in a sorority, but I went with a lot of the fraternities and sororities. So that was a lot of fun. And then I did intramural volleyball.
Oh, fun. Yeah, of course.
So I feel like those like sort of things like really helped. Actually, my college roommate, my freshman year, is still one of my best friends, and I'm in her bridal party. She's getting married next year. So
that's so cool.
Yeah, I definitely am very grateful for having that first year being on campus.
I tell people all the time, and to kind of circle and highlight that, you got to get involved your freshman year. Like meet as many people as you can, experience things, figure out what you like. Like I think freshman year is obviously such an important time in just like your young adult / college experience.
Agreed.
So you went through that. By the way you did do college with the red carpets and stuff like that, I mean, I could only imagine how rad that was and the people that you got to meet and the experiences you had to have. So that's awesome. Now moving on to the WWE. So you get this opportunity where you are announcing and you're singing the national anthem. Where does it go from there?
So when I first got the job, I was like, oh, wow, this is like such a massive universe. And it's still like now it's even bigger than it was then. Like it was big then, but I mean, now there's movies, there's video games, there's, their own TV shows and all of this sort of thing. But, meeting it was such a different world.
You think about it, and it was right in our backyard too.
Yeah.
A lot of those people, a lot of those guys live in Clearwater.
Which is so random because I'd never met any of them growing up here. Or if I had, I didn't know, right? But so I ended up, it was a little bit more difficult living in California and doing it all because I would say that their schedule and their lineup is definitely more East Coast heavy.
Okay.
So for me, it was actually really taxing because every single week, because I was doing Smackdown, ECW, and Superstars, which would film on Tuesdays. And so I'd have to fly out on a Monday, I'd shoot all day on a Tuesday, and I'd take the earliest flight back on a Wednesday so I could be in LA to audition or go to callbacks or film stuff or different things like that. And so it was a lot of every week, cross-country travel. So that was intense. Yeah. Because I'd say probably only, and it's maybe changed now, but at the time when I was doing it, I'd say probably only 20% of all of the shows that were filmed were on the West Coast. Pretty much everything else was middle of the country or East Coast.
I think that's where a lot of their demographic is as well. So yeah, that definitely makes sense. So God, and I can imagine, I mean, I've taken those California flights 100 times and they are
rough,
brutal.
Yeah.
So where do you go from there? So you're with WWE.
For a little
you
less
go through
than a
that.
year.
So a year. And then where's next?
Let's see. I was about to say when I graduated. I didn't graduate, but when I left WWE, I continued singing and acting and things like that in LA. And I kind of went through my next kind of like, I'd say, difficult phase or like
season.
Yeah, like struggle of like, am I happy? Like, am I progressing? Am I doing what I wanted to do? Want to do? I felt like during that, even though I was so busy during the WWE stuff, I still wasn't, I still really missed like the acting and the music. And coming back to it, I felt like it was that same struggle that I had before when I'd taken a large break, like with that senior year of college. It was kind of the same thing. So that was hard. I did at the same time start doing a lot of hosting stuff. So I did red carpet on-air hosting for Access Hollywood for 2 or 3 years, and then I hosted my own show called Real Access that was on the In Network, which is basically like the same thing as Access Hollywood. It was just for like teens and young adults as opposed to, full-blown adults, if you will. So that was kind of like a fun caveat that I got to do and was hosting other music shows and things like that. But I basically kind of got to the point where I was deciding, do I keep going through with this? Do I move? And at that point, there was still really only LA or New York to be able to do what I was doing at that level, right? So then I kind of looked back at my college career and I was like, well, do I enact plan B and like become a doctor? And I actually ended up
What a switch.
I know,
right?
right?
What a conundrum. It's like, do I
know.
leave entertainment and go be a doctor?
So it's really hard to explain. If you haven't lived in LA and work in entertainment, it feels like, though it's such a massive city, it feels like a very, very small microcosm. Like it feels like you can't ever escape the industry. So imagine if like whatever you're doing, if you go to a restaurant or a bar or wherever, like everyone that you meet works within that industry, does what you do or wants to do it.
Producer, cameraman,
Something, yeah.
assistant, actor, model, etc. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And so that was one thing that was kind of difficult because you never feel like you can escape it or have a break from it. It's also hard because of the fact that everyone's trying to either do what you do or do it better or whatever, that there's this weird competitive air that even if you don't want to engage in that, still exists. And like that can also, after a period of time, start to feel like stressful and like weighting down on you, et cetera. So based on all of these things, I'd kind of been toying with the fact for a lot, like, okay, maybe I need a change, and I didn't really know how to enact that change. And I didn't necessarily want to go become a doctor, but I didn't feel happy and I didn't know what to do to make myself happy. So I decided, okay, let's just do a drastic change. So I basically did my post-bac. I had like 2 physics classes or something that I had to finish and 1 chem class. I finished them in like night school at UCLA. And then I basically read the DAT, which is the dental admissions test, cover to cover for dummies, and applied, did really well on my DAT and got accepted into a bunch of schools. And I moved from LA to San Francisco to go to dental school. I actually did it. Yep, I actually did
Curveball. Okay,
Curveball.
Yeah, okay.
So sold my condo in LA, moved to San Francisco, started going to dental school, and made it about...
I'm like, I did not see this.
Didn't see this.
You got me. Okay.
I'd say probably only about 20%, maybe less, 15% of people who know me know about this portion of my life. Wasn't that long-lived, to be honest.
That's so
made it about
this is awesome.
3-4 months going through amalgam preps and things like that until one day in class, the teacher was like, starts talking about, the first day of the next 30 years of your life. And I'm like, oh my God. And I like raised my hand and I'm like, excuse me, can I go to the bathroom? And they're like, you're an adult. You don't have to ask. I'm like, okay. And I didn't come back.
You're that story. You're that movie.
You can't make this up. So I called my mom
I just
first.
wanted to change. Like, I wasn't looking for 30 years here. Like,
I was like, wow. I was like, is it hot in here? Is it just me? So I called my mom first. She cried not because she desperately...
Just trying to decide if I want to do cleanings or braces. Like, I didn't know 30 years of this.
I mean, not because she desperately wanted me to become a dentist, but it was more so because she was like, now what? I had moved my entire life, sold the condo that, I had bought with my family in LA, was living in San Francisco, a city that, is a C-rate entertainment market in comparison to LA, had taken out loans to go to dental school and all this other stuff. So she was like, okay. And then I called the dean's office and I told them, and by the way, you guys, if going was scary and making that life change, quitting was like 20 times as scary. A, because I've never quit anything, I don't think, in my life. And B, because, I also, too, was like, now what? And it wasn't like it hadn't dawned on me, A, how much work it had taken to get there, not only to study for the DAT, apply to all the schools, do interviews at all the schools, all of the things, all the essays you have to write. It's so much time and effort and money and all of these different things.
It might have been the first time in your life, it sounds like, that you didn't have a plan.
That's probably true. I had no plan. And so a couple things happened. Well, first of all, the dean wouldn't let me quit right away. He wanted to talk to me first because he was like, trying to make sure. He's like, I don't understand why you're doing this. And I basically just explained to him exactly what I said to you, which is that I knew I needed to change. Obviously, I thought this could have potentially been it. I guess maybe if I was really being honest with myself deep down, I probably knew that it wasn't. But enough so that I did it, that I went through all of these steps and got that far. Anyways, he was very understanding, and I left school, and then I was like, all right, well, I'm gonna figure this out. Because at that point, that was kind of like a secondary career for me. I wasn't like a newbie right out of college. I'd already been graduated from college for a couple years, so it's kind of like a second, start in education. So at this point, two things happened. One, I booked a national commercial for Sweet Tarts, which I feel is like kind of ironic, being that I was going to be a dentist and like candy being the arch nemesis of the
Sweet
dentites.
Tarts are good though,
if you will,
so,
they are delicious.
yeah.
Anyways, I got a residual check, and as luck would have it, it was basically exactly what I owed to the school.
No way.
Not even joking.
Like, fate would have it. There you go.
So I didn't make a lot of money from it, but it was a lot of money, but I didn't get to keep it, is what I mean. I immediately had to sign it over to the school.
You satisfied your responsibility.
But at least I wasn't in debt. So
great.
Which is huge.
Yeah, that's amazing.
That was phenomenal. So at that point, I started actually kind of getting
Which 90% of our audience probably can't say that they don't have. So you are an anomaly in more ways than one, to say the least.
I really lucked out.
Yeah.
I don't know. The Sweet Tart gods were really looking out for me that day. I don't know. I don't even know.
Did you tell them that you were in dental school prior to the commercial?
No, they didn't know, but oh my gosh, how funny is that,
so
right?
Awesome.
Actually, I think that would have made them want me more, being like, even former dentist, like, loves this product.
Just a couple months, but I mean, who am I to?
Yeah, I don't remember anything, by the way. I think
hairs.
I took all of that, knowledge, and I was like, I don't need it, so I'm going to move it out so I can make space for something new. But anyway, I was terrified going into the workforce then, because I was like, okay, now what? So I ended up actually getting into content creation and influencer stuff.
Before you go there, though, but you were able to do that, and I want the audience to hear that, because you were, I guess, smart enough or had the support system or had the wherewithal to go get a fantastic degree.
Yeah, I think
I'm sure that helped.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, education is something that no one can ever take away from you, no matter what field you're in, no matter what you're doing. So being able, but I think it's also too the work ethic that my parents instilled in me, which I think that no matter how much education that you have, if you don't have the want or the drive, then that's a whole other different thing, right? You A, have to have the know-how, but B, you have to strive out there and go and get it. And I think a lot of people are really afraid of taking big swings and missing and failing, or how that's going to feel to be rejected. I think the one thing that acting and music did do for me is that I've been rejected so many times.
You're just like,
that I'm like,
it's par for the course.
Let's just, what's the worst that can happen, And I'm not saying, to be fair, I'm not saying that it necessarily gets easier to get rejected. I mean, I'd say that certain times, when I get really, really close to a big film or a TV show or something, especially after I've gone through producer sessions or, mix and match sessions, or the closer I get to it, the more you can taste it, I think those ones definitely hurt the most when you don't end up getting it. So there is, there's always going to be that sense, but I would say that if I didn't learn to take risks and to, reach out and to just ask the questions, then it's definitely not going to happen, right? So in this sort of period of my life, I was trying to figure out, what am I going to do while I still have my lease in San Francisco? I want to figure out where I'm going to move. And at that point, I didn't really want to go back to LA, because that felt almost like a step backwards for me. Just because I'd already been there, done that, I'm like, okay, it needs to be something new, right? So I started contemplating places that I could go where I could still do acting and music that had both of those sort of fields. I kind of narrowed it down to like Toronto, Atlanta, and New York.
Wow. Okay.
So that's what I was looking at. And I kind of in the interim, because, now I'm living in San Francisco, which is arguably even more expensive than New York to live in. So I'm like, well, I have to pay my bills in the interim. So I ended up starting doing the content creation, some more influencer stuff, which at that point, I'd amassed a pretty decent social media following from the WWE, from the acting stuff.
So you're in your late 20s probably at this point? Like
yes.
Mid-ish, late 20s kind of deal?
Correct. Exactly. So mid-ish, late 20s. And I start not only working with brands myself, but also I was working with a company that was based out of because they were like, listen, Lauren, they were kind of like in awe where they were like, okay, we have some influencers that have maybe double the followers that you have, but they're not getting nearly as many activations and they're not getting paid the same amount. Like, what's the secret? And I go, well, the secret is I'm not sitting around waiting for Coca-Cola to come knock on my door and be like, hey, want to do a campaign with us? Because not that those sorts of things can't happen, but they're much fewer and far between because there's just so much great talent and so many great people around there. Now, however,
you got to make your own opportunity.
Correct.
Especially if how competitive, even more so now with how great.
Now you definitely have to. If you just sit there and wait for it to come to you, no, unless you're like a massive influencer and you've created your brand so much so that people are just knocking down your door. But yeah, especially now with, how many people there are and how competitive it is, you definitely have to make your own opportunities. So I was basically coming up with these kind of overarching ideas where I was putting influencers together and coming up with whether it was a music video sort of concept or a vlog series sort of concept, but I was putting together influencers and basically offering a brand something where I had already done all the legwork and figured out, all the people that would be involved and why their product was perfect and why we were reaching out to them and why this was the price point and how it would make sense for them. I basically did all of that work.
You were sharing a story.
Right.
You put together the story, not like, hey, we'd like to work with you.
Right. I kind of put all of these key points together.
It's like, this is what we're going to do for you. You were offering value.
Right. And so when you do reach out to a brand like that, a lot of times they're like, oh, you know what? I didn't even know we needed that, but we do need that. And actually, yeah, we can afford that. And oh, wow, you have all these other influencers already involved. And oh, wow, this concept is really cool. And yeah, and we can reuse this in a bunch of different ways. So they basically, this influencer company that was based out of LA at the time kind of took me on. And I took on this role of putting together these influencer collaborations as a group that I was a part of. So I did that for a while in the interim until I moved to New York. And that's actually, sorry, also, because you were asking me about when the DJing happened, the DJing stuff, all of that started to really formulate and explode during the time when I was in San Francisco as well.
You finally made the move to New York, which I feel like you were always, is the way the story was going, you were going to end up there anyway, because that seemed like most likely.
I had really been wanting to move back to New York for a long time, but it was very daunting to me to be like, okay, yeah, let me just move back to New York when I have all these jobs or these regular things that I'm doing in Los Angeles, and then just hope I book something in New York. It just felt like a lot of, I don't know, putting a lot on maybes, if you will. But after this whole experience in San Francisco, one, I had already left LA and sold my place. So I wasn't, I didn't have that home base anymore. So that helped. And then two, by doing all this influencer and content creation thing, I'd now created a source of income for myself that wasn't tied to a certain location. So that was also really important.
Very interesting.
Yeah. And during that time too is also when I got back into songwriting. So when I first came out to LA, I was writing and licensing a lot of music to film, TV, commercials. At this point, I've licensed maybe over 250 songs to TV and commercials and stuff. But I hadn't done it for a while because I was so focused on, obviously, dental school and, I don't know, losing my mind, apparently, that at that point I started getting more into that. And that's also something where I could do anywhere. So at that point, I decided that New York was the best place, not only because it had a really vibrant acting and music scene, but also because I had the background there of having acted there when I was a kid, having been on the soap opera there as a kid. I had a lot of friends that lived there now at this point, and it also was pretty close to Tampa. And honestly, being on the same time zone.
2.5 hour flight now.
Infinitely better than a 5-hour flight plus a 3-hour time difference. Mm-hmm. So that was really nice. And New York, I don't know if it was a combination of me just being open to whatever, or just a new chapter and me being that fresh-eyed new kid, or I don't know what combination of things, but a lot of things really took off for me once I got to New York. I'd say that the acting wave finally hit again, where I started booking a ton of stuff. One of those things being a series regular role for DreamWorks Trollstopia, where I was because it ended just last year, but I was one of the series regulars. I was the speaking voice and singing voice for Val Thundershock, who's the queen of the rock and roll trolls. So she was very cute.
Pop diva.
Oh my gosh, she's fingerless gloves, the purple pigtails with the skull and crossbone barrettes. She was a vibe for sure. Anyways, also during that time is when all of the DJing kind of blew up. That's when I started DJing for TAO Group and doing Marquee and LAVO, which then opened it up to me being able to travel all over the U.S. and then also internationally. And so, yeah, it all kind of started coming together at that point.
So tell me, as one of the questions that I had, how did you keep all of those crazy DJing hours? It's like most of the time you're not going on till what, 10, 11, 12 at night?
That is a great question. So now I feel like the more that you establish yourself in not only like your genre, but in what you want to do, you're able to kind of pick and choose the sorts of things that you want to do. So I do a lot of day parties, pool parties,
I've seen that
yacht
recently,
parties.
yeah.
So now I have like a pretty normal, I work mostly still on weekends, but I have a pretty normal like work schedule, whereas, normal-ish, I guess, or better than it was. But yeah, during this period of time when I was living in New York, oh my gosh, because first of all, I'm still acting, so I'm still keeping, normal workday hours where I'm going on auditions, I'm recording at the studio during the day, I'm going and I'm doing Trollstopia and other voiceovers and all these other things, and then I get home at 7:30 where most people are winding down, and I'm like, I gotta perform at LAVO tonight, and I don't even start till 11, and it's gonna go till 3, and like, so at a lot of these places, I would play from 11 to midnight, then the headliner would go on from midnight to 1:30, and then I'd close.
Wow.
From 1:30 to 3 a.m.
So you were starting and finishing. Holy cow.
So the mental process at 7:30 where you're like, do I nap?
So you're at 3 o'clock, and then obviously you're not taking off at 3 o'clock because you're probably hanging out with some people.
Oh, no. When you're doing it every night or when you're doing it that
when you're done, you're done.
You are immediately like, it's 3:01. I'm like, see ya.
Yeah.
I'm like, bye.
See you at the next one, guys.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
and I'm home by 3:15 and asleep. Like I'd say one of my special superpowers is I can fall asleep like that. I can also take power naps. Like if I have like
power naps are where it's at.
Oh, you don't even know. I can be like, I have 30 minutes, which means I can easily get a 20 to 25 minute nap. I put on my Audible.
Am I admitting on the podcast right now that sometimes I'll take a 10-minute nap in my car to get through the day?
I'm super proud of you.
I get up at 4:30, people, okay? You leave me be. I have a 2.5-year-old son. Give me a break, okay?
I'm wildly impressed with you. And by the way, I don't know how you'd make it if you didn't take those 10-minute naps. There's some times where I've been so tired in LA driving in a car where I'm like, I'll have an audition or something and I'll change. I can't even tell you guys how many times I've changed in a Starbucks. Thank goodness for Starbucks and any other coffee spot. Coffee Bean and Tea Leaf, big fan. All of these places. The gym. Honestly, when you don't have enough time to go back home and you have everything in your backpack or in your car, you just got to change in the Starbucks, So big fan. Thank you, Starbucks.
Yeah, thank you, Starbucks. That's how hard we work for you people, that we are sleeping in our cars for power naps and bringing a change of clothes to change at the local Starbucks before picking up our extra large skinny vanilla bean latte. So
you go flavors?
I don't even know what that is. I was just making something up. So I don't even know. I do get the vanilla bean.
I don't know if that was your go-to. You just spit it out.
I get the vanilla bean because it tastes like a milkshake.
Okay.
But,
that's nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have no idea what they put in it, but it tastes good.
Perfect.
It's not even coffee.
Perfect.
So you're going through these just crazy hours. You're just hustling. That's one thing that I can say throughout your whole story. Like you never stopped hustling. There was, even when you may have not had the direction that you anticipated, you were still going somewhere. You were still going forward. And I think that's such an important lesson for the viewers. Right. It's like, you may not know where you're going.
Yeah, sometimes you don't know.
Doesn't mean to stop going.
Sometimes you try a direction and you realize, nope, not it.
Yeah.
And then, you pivot.
Yeah, just go to the bathroom real quick.
Just pivot.
And then just see ya. So
that's right.
I love that. You pivot, you're in this so now this is where your life kind of takes you now. You started the DJing in New York, and then so did you have a place in Tampa at the time, or are you kind of coming back and forth?
No, at the time I was fully living in New York, but I was traveling a lot, not only nationwide. Like I had a residency in Vegas at Park MGM and also at Virgin Casino. I played a lot in Austin, in Nashville, in San Diego.
Was that just surreal? Like you're just, by the way, if you haven't been to a Vegas nightclub, I've been insane. A handful of times. It's a completely different experience than anything you've ever been to.
Yeah.
And Miami is obviously very similar, but was that surreal for you to be like, walk in the back, head on stage, hundreds of people, tables, bottles, celebrities,
for sure.
I'm just like,
I think that,
I'm controlling the vibe.
I think that one, too, like knowing that that's the creme de la creme of where all of the, no matter where you're from, like every massive DJ plays in Vegas at some point, if not millions of times.
That's the grill, yeah.
I think that getting those residencies definitely felt like, okay. Like it definitely was a big moment where I feel like I'm really doing this.
Is that when I always ask my guests, is that where you felt successful, or was there another point in your life? Like, when did you, I kind of explain it a little bit more detail. When did things like feel different for you throughout your journey?
So here's what's crazy about my journey. As I'd say, most people, and this is what I explained to most people, you know, they go to high school, they go to college, they get their first job, they get a raise, they become a this. You know, it's a kind of a straight up trajectory. Maybe there's a few dips and crevices. My career has been like, whoo! It's like mountains and valleys and peaks and ledges and all over the place. And so when have I felt successful? I mean, about 1 million times over the course of my career, but I've also felt wildly unsuccessful maybe right after it. I mean, so it's not been a straightforward trajectory for me, and some things have been wins in certain ways, and other things have been wins in other ways. You know, like, okay, getting to do those Vegas residencies, getting to headline for my first time, I remember when that happened, getting to do my first festival, all of those things felt like really big things. But then also sometimes you can, you know, after COVID, unfortunately, my music manager was the only person I knew in real life personally that was close to me that passed away due to COVID. And so that was a really huge loss, not only professionally, but really personally, because he was a dear friend and kind of like an uncle figure to me. So that was really hard, and then kind of trying to regroup and rebrand that and realizing how much he was doing in terms of negotiating and all these other things for me. And, you know, I feel like sometimes it can be so disheartening. Like, you feel like you've done all of these things, and then you work in a new area or a new space or have to do it for yourself, and, you know, you feel like you're almost being nickel and dimed by someone, you know, where
you're fighting for your food.
Yeah, where I'm like, you know, like yesterday, I was getting paid 3 times this amount. Like, it's so crazy.
I just wanted red Skittles, okay? I just wanted red Skittles in the dressing room.
It's not that difficult.
Yeah, no, come on.
But, you know, I think one thing that this brings me to actually probably the thing I've learned the most from, like, the industry is I've been humbled, like, I mean, enough for a lifetime. I feel like, you know, what I had to realize is, Lauren, just because you know that you've performed at the Super Bowl or like got a standing ovation from Michael Jackson or have done any of these things, like, doesn't mean that this person who is undercutting you, like, you know, for something that, you know, they don't know. You know, they don't know these things, or they don't know whatever, or it also doesn't matter to them because it's a different vertical and whatever. So each new thing, I just try to see what is it that I can offer for this person or for their venue or for their you know, whatever production or whatever it is that they're doing, that how can I be you know, an add value or an asset to them and make myself integral or increase my value so that I'm paid what I want to be paid. So, and sometimes that answer, you know, means that you have to reinvent yourself, not once, not twice, not 3 times, but continuously throughout your career and throughout your life, especially when you're doing not just one thing like music, but, you know, also with the acting and the hosting and the different things like that. So I've definitely had inner conversations with myself where I'm like, okay, I've decided now at this point that I'm not, if I feel like something is not worth my time for whatever reason, or it's not the price point, whatever, I'm just going to say no. If I say yes and I make that decision that it is worth my while, whether it's because it's an opportunity that I want to do, even if it's paying me less than what I think I deserve, or maybe the money's good, but the opportunity is not like where I want it to be, whatever reason, if I decide that I'm in, I am going to treat that like it's the Super Bowl, like it's the most important thing of my career, because the times
you've made that commitment.
Right, exactly. One, because I want to do that for whoever has hired me, right? Like, I want to do the best job that I can do. But 2, and even more importantly, I want to do that for myself, because there's nothing worse than doing something that you feel like, you know, is maybe not the right fit, or something that you felt you didn't want to do anyway, and then not doing your best at it, and then like, it's just such an icky, gross feeling where, yeah, I just, you know, I did that, you know, it really only took once or twice of that happening when I was a kid, and I was like, never again. So I look at the, you know, the opportunity, you know, in its entirety, and it's not just about money. It's also about, like, what could this lead to? Or, you know, is this person, you know, someone that I want to work with, or that I think I can grow with, or that I think we can be able to do things in the future together? Like, there's a whole plethora of different things that I kind of check off in my mind mentally of, like, what would make a certain opportunity meaningful or not, you know? And some of it's monetary, some of it's relationship based, some of it's opportunity or career elevation. It's all different sorts of things.
So do you think, you know, just basically, if you're not going to do something 100%, don't do it?
Oh, like, without a doubt. Without a doubt. You have, and I know it's hard because, sometimes people, especially if they're an independent contractor, maybe they do something for the money when they don't really want to do the show because they're like, God, I really don't want to do this, but I need to pay rent or I need to do this. And I respect that. I understand that. But if you're deciding that you need the money for whatever reason, then you got to be in 100%. And even if whatever that job is, you really, because one, you never know who's going to be there, but two, like, you have to be able to look yourself in the mirror and like just respect what you're doing and respect your craft and respect, the effort and the talent that you put into something. So.
I agree 100%. Do you think that when you were going through these peaks and valleys, and we'll talk about, both highs and lows, do you think that you really ever reflected on these moments, or do you think it was short-term memory, hey, look at it, and then move forward?
No, I think about them all the time.
Okay, do you?
All the time. Sometimes, like, even in my like quiet moments where I'm like doing my hair, my makeup, or like I'm in the shower, whatever, sometimes I'm haunted by certain moments. Like, there are certain auditions where like I feel like my boyfriend's walked in the room and he'll see me kind of like shudder and be like, ugh. And he'll be like, what just happened? And I'm like, it'll be literally a memory that's so visceral, or was like such a like integral part of like forming, maybe how I approach auditions, or what happened in that day, or why, whatever it was that made that event occur, that I still remember them like very, very vividly, like even today. So yeah, I definitely, maybe, I don't know, maybe some would say I hold on to some of them a little too tightly. I definitely am a person who I care very strongly and I feel very passionately about things. So maybe it hurts my heart a little bit more, or like gives me a little bit more stress than maybe I need to do. So, I mean, these are all things, it's always a growing and moving process. I mean, I think it's good that I remember, maybe not that I torture myself sometimes.
Recognize, but yeah, not.
Right, but like remember it and let that pass and let it go. Remember it so that you don't make the same mistake in the future, but not so that, you're haunting yourself forever by it, There's nothing you can do to change it.
Does it bother you that, maybe some of because obviously acting and music and performing has a lot to do with passion and what you're displaying to the crowd. And you can take that in a couple different ways, but when people may not take the craft, or I'll even go further than that. For the people that have had even better opportunities maybe than you have, does it bother you that they haven't taken the opportunity as serious as you may have? I
mean, everyone has their own journey and their own path, so I'm not going to judge someone else like for how serious or not serious like they take it. Like, I feel like, there are definitely certain people, especially in the DJ world, that maybe have taken.
You're not going to go with the must be nice kind of thought process.
No, I actually don't. I actually so I'll see sometimes that people are like, oh, is it annoying for you that you opened up for this reality star or whatever, like who's only been DJing for, whatever, 6 months.
That's a great
and
example,
you've been, yeah. And I'm like, you know what? Here's the thing. There's so much more to being an entertainer than like just being able to, beat match and, understand keys. And like, obviously those things are incredibly, incredibly important. But if somebody's learning and doing it and has taken a platform where they've also had their own struggles and their own trials and whatever, to get to where they are, I don't fault them at all for utilizing that platform to become big in another platform. I mean, that's what I try to do with acting to music and music to acting and acting to, hosting or content creation. Like, I'm trying to use anything within my wheelhouse or within my, arsenal to be able to lift me up to that next level. Now, if somebody is just utilizing that platform and really doesn't know what they're doing and has somebody else putting together their entire set and is just pushing play and is just jumping around like a monkey up there, it's not the best. I mean, that's not great, but
that's probably going to be found out soon enough as well.
But, a lot of times those people, it will, if you don't, this is what I believe. I think that if you don't take the time to learn or to get good at it, then it will have its moment in the sun and then it will probably fizzle out, because the only way, it is such a, dog eat dog, like, competitive market out there, that unless you're constantly like setting yourself apart and trying to improve and trying to be better and trying to hone your craft, like, I feel like it's eventually going to come crumbling down, So, if you end up getting that first initial boost because you are in a different field and then you're kind of learning as you're going, like, I respect that. Like, that's okay. But if you've gone 2 years from that point and you're still at that, you're still riding the coattails of like being I mean, we just used a reality star as an example. I'm not hating on reality stars by any means, but, then I think that is maybe a little bit more frustrating at that point, or may, run its course.
For whatever reason, tell me about one of your most memorable performances. Like that time at the Hard Rock when Tiesto asked you for a photo.
Oh yeah, that
which was
pretty
so
cool.
epic. I saw that. We talked about that.
I mean, it was just crazy.
I said to my wife, I was like, is that Lolo up there? And she's like, yeah, that's Lolo. And I'm like, Did Tiesto just give her a hug and take a photo?
Yeah, it was kind of, he was so nice. It's so funny.
He seems cool.
He's so sweet. It was interesting because the tour manager actually told me, he's like, okay, we're going to let you know if you can come up there, if he's just going to end it and whatever. I'm like, okay. And then he's like, yeah, he'll just decide. And so I see them talking and whatever, and he's like pointing whatever, and then he looks at me and he's like, okay, yeah, he like, apparently, I don't know, I passed some sort of test.
You got the nod, yeah.
I got the nod, so I came up. And then like as I'm standing there, he just starts chatting with me and whatever, and then he looks to his tour manager and he's like, well, Pat, are you going to take a picture of us? And then Pat's like, okay. And I'm like, wait, you want a picture? He's like, is that okay? I'm like, you're asking me? I'm like, of course it's okay. Like, I'm like, yes.
Send me that immediately.
I'd be honored. Let's do it, you know? Anyways, it's just so random and backwards and all the things. I mean, if anything, I, obviously would have been grateful and asking him to take a photo with me. So I was, very honored that he, I don't know, even said that.
Yeah, he's one of my favorites, and he seems like a really nice guy. We on my bachelor party, he was one of the acts that we went to go see, DJs, and we were jumping up and down on couches at 5 o'clock in the morning, and it was a darn good time. So, and we'll leave that there. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas.
That's right. You don't say anything more.
Yeah. Nobody else was there except the old groomsmen. It was just us in a room and Tiesto. But tell us about, your most memorable performance, or one of them that you can recall.
Okay. I feel like I have to say or talk about performing at the Super Bowl. I'd be remiss. I mean, that was an amazing opportunity. So my band at the time was being managed by Johnny Wright, who also managed Britney Spears.
Yeah, of course.
And NSYNC. And so they were doing the halftime show. And so we got to do pregame with Sting and Styx. And that was definitely the largest audience I've ever performed for. I mean, forget like the televised audience. I think it was like 98,000 people or something like that live. And I just remember looking up, and I've never seen something so beautiful. They had given everyone disposable cameras, and they were under the seats. And so everyone was just taking a million photos. So it just looked like a million tiny fireflies exploding in a circle. Wow. All the way around me, and it was just so epic and cool. Oh, and also, right after we finished performing, because Steven Tyler was performing at halftime or whatever as well, he came up and told me I rocked. Yeah. Not forgetting that.
There's that.
Yeah, I was like, there's that.
After performing at the Super Bowl.
After performing at the Super Bowl.
No,
we were just hanging out as
just
one
a
does,
little life hammer.
Backstage, or, whatever, at the Super Bowl.
As everyone does.
Yeah, on the sidelines. And then Steven Tyler comes up to me and was like, you rocked. And I was like, ah!
You rock, Steven.
And even my 16-year-old self was like, commit to memory for all of life.
Wow.
Never forget.
What? That is that you were 16. I mean, that you were like able to remember that and like really take that in.
I'm not forgetting that one.
Oh yeah, that's absolutely insane. What a life hammer.
Yeah,
like,
totally crazy.
Holy cow.
Totally crazy.
So, I mean, if there's some type of parting advice after your whole journey that you could give the audience, share something with us.
Oh man, I've told you so many ugly truths that I've learned from and everything.
Tell me, here's what let me put a little bit more emphasis on that. Tell me what you would tell 17-year-old Lolo that's just about to commence onto adult life.
I would tell her to be kinder to herself. I definitely went through a period, and I think that's what led to me going to dental school, where I was very not kind to myself, and I was very upset with where I was at, and I guess my progress, if you will. And I think that it's important to know, especially when you're an entrepreneur, when you're your own business, when you're an entertainer, or doing anything that's outside of the box, where there isn't this, specific, route that you're supposed to follow, that you can't expect it to be a straightforward trajectory, and it is going to take all these different ups and downs and all these things. And, I think that it's hard because when and I think you mentioned it briefly earlier, but as an entertainer, you are so passionate because you are bringing elements of you into like the acting. When you're, writing music, you're maybe writing about your own personal life. Like, so much of it is so personal. And that's how I try to explain it to other people. Some people have just jobs that they go and they do, but they just do that to make money to go live their life, and that's what fulfills them. Other people have careers where they take pride in it and what they do, but they still kind of just make the money to go live their lives and do their fun hobbies and be with their families and stuff, which is phenomenal. How I would describe my job is that it is so inextricably linked with who I am that I don't really know how to dissociate the two. And so I think that at the points of my life when the career wasn't going so well, it made me have such a bad sense of self, because my sense of self was so tightly wound up. It
was such a significant part of your identity.
Right. And so I think that it's important, while I think that, a certain amount of angst does help you to become, a good artist. I mean, if you think about it, like a lot of the times the best like albums are like, their first album when the artist is like struggling and making no money and all this other stuff. And then all of a sudden it's like, that was their best album. Or like, I feel like also too, like even going through so many.
Because I had no money and I was trying to eat.
Or even
I would put out anything.
As you go through.
It hit.
Yeah. As like an actor, having gone through so many different things like in life now at this point, I feel like it's made me a better actor because I've able to draw from more things in my life of like where it's come from. So I do think that it's helped me in those ways, but I do wish that I had maybe been, and obviously it's easier in hindsight because, here I am doing what I love still and making a living at it and feeling very comfortable. And while I'm still like not where I want to be and still, progressing every day, you don't know that at the time, like 20 years ago or 10 years ago, 20 years ago, whatever. So I think that it's important just to know that just to take a deep breath and not to focus on all the things that are going wrong, but the things that are in your control that you can change. Because I think I focused on a lot of things that maybe weren't right, but there wasn't really anything I could do about it, So if you can do something about it and change it, then you should do it. But if you can't, then what's the point of just like dwelling and stewing in that negativity? It's definitely not going to bring any new great opportunities or people around you,
I think that's amazing. My wife, she checks in on me all the time, and one of the things she'll ask me, probably every quarter, every couple months, she's like, are you, especially if I hit a milestone, and she's like, are you happy? Mm-hmm. Like, well, why don't you seem happy? And I said, sweetheart, I'm beyond happy and blessed, but I don't know if I'll ever be fully satisfied.
Right.
But on the hindsight, like you're saying, you got to take a moment and smell the roses.
Yeah.
You got to count your blessings and all the good things that are going on in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a great lesson for all of us, is just to not be so hard on yourself all the time. There's going to be trials and tribulations. That's okay.
I think the difference that I've been able to do now is not forget about those things and never stop striving, but I'm better at compartmentalizing. So I'm better at being like, you know what?
It's fuel for me.
Yeah,
I use it as fuel.
This is a thing I do need to worry about, but I don't need to worry about it right now, because right now is fun time because I'm, whatever, doing charcuterie and wine night with my girlfriends, or I'm playing board games, or I'm going out and dancing, or whatever I'm doing, or I'm traveling. So I've gotten good at being like, okay, I'm going to focus and worry about these things now, and now I'm going to push pause on this and then just turn it off. So I feel like that's important. And it's, I feel like I've had a whole lifetime to kind of like hone that craft. And I feel like that's something that I've gotten a lot better at and that I'm pretty decent at now at this point in my life, which I think has really helped me in terms of happiness.
I love it. I love it. Well, I cannot thank you enough for joining us today. Where can everybody find you?
Well, it's basically Lolo Mayhew on all the social media. So on Instagram, on X, which is still weird for me to say instead of Twitter.
It's Twitter.
Yeah, right? It still feels like it's like all the things. And then on YouTube, Facebook, and Spotify, it's Lauren Mayhew. So either Lauren Mayhew or Lolo Mayhew will get you to all things Lolo.
Well, we will make sure to put your links in the description.
Yes.
Okay. Make sure, my producer would yell at me if I didn't tell you to not like, subscribe, comment. There were some life hammers in here, folks. I mean, there was some amazing information. So comment one of your favorite quotes or things that we mentioned in the podcast. We would love to see those. And as always, we end the podcast with, it is no accident that DJ Lolo, aka Lauren Mayhew, is as successful as she is. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you for being here. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.